when the prodigal son returns home again, with no shoes on his feet, and all battered by sin. His father looked down that old long dusty road. He brought him a ring and the very best robe.
My name is Jessica, and I'm 36 years old. I'm a recovering addict from methamphetamine. I don't like to refer to myself as an addict anymore because God took that from me. He broke those chains of addiction, and as I'm sure that sounds real cliche and hard to believe, it's very true. My addiction started later in life. I was a single mom, raising 3 most amazing children, 2 boys and a girl. I owned my own home from the time I was 19. I put myself through nursing school while raising 2 boys and carrying my baby girl in my womb, the last semester of nursing school. I swore I would never touch drugs. I never understood how someone could choose drugs over their family and their children, and I never understood how someone could call it a disease when clearly it was a choice. I graduated nursing school in May of 2011. My daughter was born in June 2011. I had what many thought was a perfect life. At the time, I was married to my daughter's father, who was a veteran and dealt with anxiety, depression, and PTSD. He was verbally abusive, and sometimes it became physical. In 2018, he admitted himself into the VA for having suicidal thoughts, and then before I knew it, we were in the midst of a nasty divorce. I found myself battling depression, having self-worth issues, and I felt like I was failing as a mother. I began searching for something to fill that void in my life and thought what I needed was a man. In May of 2019, I was introduced to a man that I thought was everything I could ever dream of. He loved me the way I always dreamt of being loved. He loved my kids and treated them like his own. He was so good to us and supported me in everything. In the midst of all of this, my family kept trying to tell me to get away from him, that he was bad news. They sent me news articles, stories of his past and horrible things that he did, but I would chalk it up to that was 10 years ago. That was his past. He wasn't that same person anymore as he was back then. Everyone deserves a second chance, and this was his second chance to prove to the world that he was different. In July of 2019, we ran off and got married against everyone's wishes. I started noticing changes, but I kept ignoring them. You know, those red flags go off and you just push them away. Thought it was a circus, I suppose. One weekend, the children was gone to visit with their dad, and he wanted me to try a Suboxone. I was resistant at first, but he kept telling me that there was nothing wrong with trying something new every now and then, and it would just relax me. I eventually agreed. So we snorted it, and man, did it ever burn my nose. I didn't like the way it made me feel. I was sleepy and felt drunk and had no energy to do anything but lay in the bed. A few weeks after, it's now September, we were at his birthday party that his friends were putting on for him. I went to use the bathroom, and when I came out, there was a chair sitting in the middle of the living room under the ceiling fan. I asked what was going on and why that chair was there, and he kept trying to get me to sit in it. No matter how hard I refused, he insisted even harder. I remember grabbing my keys from the counter and walking to the door, but the door was blocked and I couldn't get out. He forcefully put me in the chair and tied me to the chair. He was trying to calm me down because he knew I was going to continue to fight him. You see, all that night he'd wanted me to try meth with him, and I wouldn't do it. I kept telling him I had a career and children, and we couldn't be doing this, and I definitely wasn't going to be a part of it. He calmed me down enough to get the needle in my arm, and he proceeded to shoot me up with methamphetamine while his friends all stood around and watched. My body became warm from the top of my head to the tip of my toes. I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing out of my chest. My eyes felt like they were going to bulge out of my head, and I was still tied to this chair. He ended up having to break the chair, and when he did that, I bounced off the ground, and I'm pretty sure that's the only thing that made me take a breath. When he realized that I wasn't okay and I wasn't tolerating it well, he loaded me up and took me home, where he doctored me for 3 days because I was miserable. The children came home on Sunday, and I had to pretend like everything was okay. My children loved him, and he was good to them, and I felt I had to make it work, and I thought I could make him change and revert back to the man I fell in love with 4 short months prior. After that weekend, though, things got much worse. We began to use together on the weekends that we didn't have the kids, and while I was hiding it well and still going to work, my life was slowly falling apart. On December 13th, 2019, the man that I thought loved me beat me and left me. He had fractured my sternum, broke my foot in 3 places, broke my nose. I had a concussion and 2 black eyes. I slipped into a deep depression and didn't get out of bed for several weeks other than to go to the bathroom. My children were staying with their dad, and I had no desire to go anywhere or do anything. In January of 2020, I had decided that it was time to get myself together. I decided that I was going to file for divorce and get on with my life. On the same day that I decided that, I went to go have lunch with a friend. And lo and behold, I ran into him. Everything came flooding back. Although I had avoided the drugs after he had left the entire month of December, that was all I could think of doing. I began seeking it out for myself. I went from using every other weekend with him to not using at all, and now I was using every weekend. February 20th, I got a phone call from DCBS worker that told me I had to report in for a drug screen. Someone had called in on me. I tried a clean-out kit, drank all the water I could hold, and thought for sure I had passed it, but I was wrong. My children were removed from my home and placed with their fathers permanently. I wasn't even allowed to visit at the time. On March 20th, which is also my birthday, I was allowed a 4-hour supervised visit with my children. I had been clean, but as soon as they left, I went and used. My heart was shattered, and I didn't want to feel the emotions anymore. I just wanted to be numb. DCBS offered to get me into a program called K-Step, which would help me to get my kids back in the home as well as give me the resources I needed to get clean and stay clean. I quickly agreed, and then COVID hit. I was clean from March 22nd to May 30th. All the while, I wasn't allowed to see my children because of COVID. I ran into him at a grocery store, and once again I fell off the wagon. I began chasing my high. I managed to reel it in with only a few bad days, and then I finally got to see my children again on June 13th. I finally got to hug them, finally got to kiss their face. 3 long, unbearable months, and I finally got to see them. I got a 4-hour supervised visit. And again, the pain was unbearable, so the vicious cycle started back up. But this time I was able to hide it. I was able to keep everyone thinking I was doing great. I was passing drug screens, visiting with my kids, but as soon as I would drop them off, I would use. On September 8th, everything came to an end. I used, but this time something was different. I was blind. I couldn't breathe. And the next thing I knew, someone was over top of me, screaming at me, begging me to come back. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I had had enough. I knew that I needed help. If I didn't get the help that I needed, I wasn't going to be here to raise my babies. I called my K-Step worker and I called my DCBS worker and I told them what I'd been doing and immediately got started in an IOP program. My clean date is September 9th of 2020. I was just a few weeks into the program when I realized that something was missing. On October 4th, 2020, I attended a small church in Moorhead and I rededicated my life to the Lord. On November 1st, 2020, I was baptized. I graduated from my IOP program on December 2020 and my children came home full-time on December 11th, 2020. God seemed fit to save me from myself. I am my own worst enemy. When I rededicated myself and promised to follow Jesus, he assured me that he would never leave me or forsake me, and he hasn't. He has kept me safe and kept me through the most dangerous times. I begged him that day at the altar to please take the cravings and the taste of drugs out of my life, and he has. He's brought a God-fearing husband into my life. He has blessed me with a wonderful job. He has blessed me to repair relationships with family, and he has removed negative people from my life. He's helped me to lead a godly life and to raise my children up in a Christian home. This past Thursday, I got to have Thanksgiving dinner with my family for the first time in 2 years. When you make God number one in your life, everything else falls into place. I now know that addiction is definitely a disease and not a choice. It can come in many forms, whether it be alcohol, drugs, porn addiction, anything. But with God, all things are possible, and He can deliver you from anything. I am proud to say I have 1 year, 2 months, and 19 days clean, and without God, none of this would have been possible. He broke my chains of bondage.